Moe anime. It's certainly a controversial topic in terms of anime genres ever since the concept of it was introduced in the zeitgeist of anime discussions around the late 90s, with the popularization of the phrase being used primarily around the mid to late 2000s with the debut of shows such as Azumanga Daioh, Strawberry Marshmallow, Lucky Star, and especially Hidamari Sketch. And the contention with Moeblobs has always been the idea that it's mindless trash made exclusively to target the lowest demographic possible. But it's also arguably gauged that kind of viewpoint thanks to the fact that the genre is mostly populated by anime that focuses on female characters of the high school variety. Similar to the vein of magical girls being seen as cutesy, girly, and all around adorable, moe anime is literally in its name. It's cute shit. Which arguably is the big reason as to why the people that feel a bit put off by it are primarily men. Which a small percentage of women being potentially put off for it for differing reasons. But why talk about Moeblobs at all, you may ask? Well, today's topic is one such series that focuses on the above to such a degree that it's sometimes seen as the catalyst for moe anime to become so popularized to the point that arguably every series to come after it that has fit that mold has since got this one to thank for it being brought to the forefront. And one I personally have to thank for bringing a bit of a revelation into my life by surprise, with a bit of light music. Welcome to In Transition, a mini video essay series discussing the various thoughts, feelings, and views on the differing bits of media that have helped me on my ongoing journey with being the woman I am now. And today, we're going back to high school in more ways than one to look at a series which is very much music to my ears as it was music to my heart, as we look at KyoAni. So if we're talking about KyoAni, before anything else it needs to be said that the culture of which this series debuted in, as well as when I ended up watching it, was very much a very contentious period of time for anime viewers online. The early 2010s. This was around about the time of anime forums with discussions on them for sure, but generally speaking, we were still far and away from the times that we have now where anime fans felt comfortable enough to want to disclose that in public. At least to the degree I found myself in during this time. This era of online discussion I had found myself in was still around the time of one particular place of dwelling online but being very popular among a lot of anime fans online. Before my anime list, before Anime Planet, before even our anime, there was 4chan's A-board. Now, 4chan coming up again as a part of this journey shouldn't at all surprise you given the last time we discussed this with MLPFIM and the Bernie fandom pipeline, with its origins going back to the original Hell site. And it feels about time for me to admit that, yes, in my high school years I did lurk around there very often. Maybe too often for someone of my age, but often nonetheless. And the one board that I would frequent constantly before becoming a part of the MLP Rise was actually /A, as I had begun to look into anime discussions there, and it was about as well as you would think for a teenager of my kind. Long story short, I used it as an easy way to find out what was popular and what wasn't, and I left all discussion out of the equation. Because what I did notice during my time looking in, that the way that anime was discussed made it still feel like it was a niche market that barely anyone was allowed to know about. Stuff about hiding your power level in public was still a thing, and it was very much not a positive environment. And it was a miracle I had good taste in anything during that time. However, the one thing that stood out to me was their outright dismissal of anything related to cute girls doing cute things, or what they dubbed moe shit. Basically, if it came after 2008 and featured a female main cast and focused on slice of life, they treated it the same way that isekai is treated today. And that kind of exposure unfortunately shaped my personal perception on how I looked into anime. Because of being an AMAP myself, I took that to heart and told myself, this moe shit isn't for me. And focused primarily on the most basic bitch-shirted stuff possible for the first few years of watching anime again. And then I met this girl who would end up becoming one of my lifelong friends in high school, and even to now, and she absolutely fucking loved this show. And she managed to get certain girls in our grade to watch it as well during this period of time as well. So, After months and months and months of putting it off, loading it up, and barely making any progress of even watching episode 1, I gave it a chance. And it grew on me. It grew on my shitty little high school boy tastes, and I couldn't be more happier for it. Because it told me that this dumb slice of life cutesy Moeblobs show was a show that I could enjoy without judgment. So I binged that first season. Then waited a little bit, watched the second season, binged that entire thing over the course of a weekend, and then went back to said friend and told her, "You were right, this show is amazing, and I'm sorry I didn't watch it sooner." And she just gave me this big old grin that said, "I fucking told you, you dumb bitch." And the rest is kind of history after that. I'd go on to watch MLPFIM and become part of that fandom later on in the same year, and if it weren't for this series kind of egging me on along in that one section, I don't really know if I would have fully delved into the deep like I did when it came to getting in touch with more feminine-adjacent programming like that. But I guess that kind of leaves the question of what the hell was in a series like this that captivated a young Chloe and still has a stranglehold on me to this day, that I consider it a very personal all-time favorite anime? Well, let's get to that. KyoAni's main selling point, in all honesty, was the fact that it was made by Kyoto Animation, who had more or less made their mark in the industry with anime such as Haruhi, the aforementioned Lucky Star, and especially their works on the Key trilogy with Air, Canon, and Clannad as their main works prior to this. And KyoAni more or less took inspiration not just from the previous works that KyoAni had been working on prior to that, but arguably took inspiration from the wider genre of cute girls doing cute things that began to rise to prominence at the turn of the millennium. In essence, it's Moeblob incarnate. But it being the patient zero, as it were, for Moeblob essentially becoming the norm amongst the anime community isn't the only thing of merit in this show. As well, it may lean into it being an amalgamation of the animes that came before it of the same nature, it isn't without its heart also being a music anime as well. The series itself does have a lot of the typical cute antics happening throughout its 40-odd episode run, but at its core, it reminds you along the way that yes, the 4, later on 5 girls in the series are actually, seriously, trying to become a genuine band along the way, despite said antics. But hey, I haven't even gone around to talking about any of them, have I? So we should probably get to talking about the one I'm probably most like. Main guitarist, vocalist, and professional dummy, Yui Hirasawa. In going back to the series, I've more or less discovered that I am basically just Yui, which makes sense given I gravitated towards her the most as my favorite of the main cast when I first watched the series some 14-odd years ago. And while I probably relate a lot to her now more than I did when I was in high school, I very much feel like, aside from the younger sister being more dependable than her, that Yui is one of those core characters that influenced me a lot in a similar way that the likes of Bubbles, Pinkie Pie, and Makoto and Cornelia were in previous entries. As, like Yui, I'm a bit of a ditz, more childish than those around me are usually, and have a bit more of neurospiciness for my own good, and honestly, probably push myself too hard too fast on a lot of things, often to my own detriment at times. But her journey throughout the series, especially in its first season, of Yui going from a directionless, no aspirations, could blend into a proud, ditzy teenager who only has one named friend in the beginning, to somewhat dependable future guitarist who's known by the entire school she attends and has a close-knit group of friends is something that I can heavily relate to from my own experience. And I'd be lying if I said that Yui as that kind of core representation for myself was anything but a lovely sense of representation that I could have asked in a series like this. But that's not to say that I don't find appreciation for the other members of After School Tea Time. The next one on the list being Ritsu, who I probably only initially gravitated towards because drummer, and I was also one in high school, so go figure on that one. But Ritsu's probably second up on the list purely because of the fact that her and Yui get paired up a lot in terms of shenanigans happening. But it also doesn't exactly hurt the cause that Ritsu is also the dumbass on the traditional Genki Girl scale more than Yui's more autistic kind of dumbassery, often leading to her getting bapped on the head by her childhood friend Mio. Which, speaking of Mio, I'll be honest, I don't got a lot to say in what I take from her, especially given that she goes from playing the straight woman of the group's shenanigans to quickly being a co-conspirator in it as soon as the fifth member of the group is introduced at Asusa. Now, Asusa, on the other hand, I originally couldn't stand. Thinking she was put in as a mere light character when the middle of the series came about and they needed a dynamic switch. And while that is also true, Asusa is also just absolutely fucking cute in her own right, and there is a reason why she is one of the more popular characters. But, like Mio, I don't really think I have a lot to relate to her other than, like, maybe the kitty thing they got her to do. Yeah, it's probably just that. And Mugi? Well, genuinely speaking here, I feel like Mugi is arguably one of the finer examples of having a character in the group that is very much an unabashed himojoshi and is not even trying to hide it at all throughout the series. And as a girl lover myself, I can absolutely get behind that. It also helps that Mugi has a very distinct appearance about her. As compared to the rest of her bandmates, she has a more unique look about her when it comes to one certain part of her face. One of which the show seems to love referencing whenever they can. And as somebody with naturally thick eyebrows herself, we stan thick eyebrow representation in our cute anime girls, and Mugi is perfectly stannable as a result of that. But throughout all of this, I feel it needs to be said that I've only really talked about a lot of surface level stuff about the show itself by this point, and that is to a fault. Because KyoAni itself is a very vibes-heavy show. The premise I gave you at the beginning is what 90% of this show is from its first episode to its last. And with the other 10% being a lot of good, genuine feels in there for good measure. For all I could talk to you about the series on a surface level like that on this right now, I wouldn't do much justice to the kind of love I have for a series like this, to the point it's one of my favorite series to put on not just for myself, but for others as well, as it's gained more appreciation in the years since its completion. Because for all the talk about the cutesy moeblob vibes that we've discussed up until this point when discussing the show, there's one important thing that I have yet to really bring up about both this show and the environment I watched it in. And how the mix of both led to a not so happy feeling occurring when I began to look inward during this time. As I've made mention up until this point, I watched KyoAni primarily during my high school years. Arguably some of the most longest, painstaking years of any youth to go through, given the amount of stress, anxiety, and what have you about everything surrounding it. Not even taking into account the fact that I was growing up as a trans woman. But I haven't exactly said a lot about my experience surrounding how I watched the series, and the years in which I met with the friend that introduced me to the series. Her name is Tamara, just to make this next bit a bit easier. See, Tamara wasn't just the person who introduced me to KyoAni, she was also part of the reason why I ended up having my first bout of dysphoria in high school, when one day out of the blue I was asked to join in alongside the all-girls group in our grade, as I usually spent lunch breaks on my own with no real group to really hang out with. This was something of which genuinely surprised me, given I had a lot of struggles trying to relate to the boys of my grade for reasons I couldn't quite adequately express at the time, and felt discomfort anytime I tried to properly fit in with the rest of them. To the point I would rather be by myself most times than be around them. So when I started making the all-girls group my default group, of which they didn't find any issues with me continuing to be around with them on breaks, it filled me with a sense of relief I hadn't felt up until that point, because it felt like I belonged more with them at that time. But over time, that feeling of belonging slowly went away, and another feeling suddenly began to creep up into my head whenever they would go off and do something like bathroom races to the women's bathroom, and I'd just be sitting there, alone, waiting for them to come back, trying to keep myself busy. I thought it was imposter syndrome at first, but looking back on it now, it was obviously dysphoria. And I felt a similar aspect whenever I would watch KyoAni during this time as well. Because with the experience of being around other girls in my grade, and essentially being welcomed in as the sole honorary boy of the group, did it become clear that while I was welcomed in, I didn't exactly feel like I belonged. This wasn't for any lack of trying, mind you. It was just very obvious every so often when they would remind me of that fact, would I just slowly realize, oh, right, I'm not a girl. And watching moeblob anime like KyoAni actively made me yearn for that not to be the case. To yearn for something that was, at that time to me, impossible to reach. To quote Trent Reznor, I wanted something I could never have. Hell, you don't even have to take my word from it. Hear it from the girl who got me into it herself.
Hello, hi, I'm Tamara. I'm one of Chloe's former high school classmates. So we're talking about KyoAni and high school, so let me think, this must be 20 years ago, or thereabouts. It both doesn't surprise me, and it fills me with pride to know that Chloe's journey through understanding themselves has sparked from a little anime called KyoAni all the way until today. Chloe and I were both fans of anime in high school, so you can imagine we fit in about as well as two queer kids in a Christian school, which was exactly what we were. So, as far as KyoAni goes, Chloe and I didn't really fit in with the circles that we were in. I had a group of friends who were all girls, and Chloe, kind of breaks my heart to say it, but Chloe wanted to fit in. The group didn't really understand. I barely fit in as it was. I was very closeted, and I think Chloe was also very closeted in a way where Chloe at the time didn't understand what they were feeling, and their journey throughout has been quite good to see. I just wish we had both had a better understanding in that whole friend group as well. I did manage to get two of the friends out of, maybe even three out of that group to watch KyoAni, surprisingly. And it also isn't surprising to me that those three are actually a little bit either on the spectrum or kind of queer themselves. I think KyoAni kind of just speaks to that inner part of us as queer people, which is really cute, actually. So if I had to say anything about KyoAni and how our group dynamic worked, Chloe is absolutely Yui. I've always said this, Chloe is Yui, and if Chloe at any time talks about which character that they relate to, I bet she's gonna say Yui. As far as I go, I'm definitely Ritsu. I really wish that KyoAni had, like, I know they're like the Disney of anime, like they just refuse to acknowledge gay people. They'll say that they do later on, but they won't. Ritsu and Mio, I was so desperate in high school for them to be a thing. I was so desperate for them to even acknowledge like anything. Except all we got was that bait and switch episode, and then Azusa and Yui in the movie, which was total bait and switch as well. You can do better, KyoAni. You have it in you. It doesn't really shock me that anime was kind of like our outlet as like outsiders and outcasts. Anime just has that like way of speaking to you. In KyoAni, it's about like this group of girls who just like have this like inseparable bond between music. It doesn't really matter what it was about, honestly. It's just that craving for that group and fitting in, which is something that we both struggled with. Being able to talk about KyoAni now in the future with everything retrospectively, it's kind of eye-opening. There is one thing that I think about Yui, is that Yui would absolutely be an outcast if she didn't have her passion for music. So it's part of why I relate Chloe to Yui, is that Chloe's very passionate. I've never seen anyone more passionate about certain subjects than I have with Chloe. And also, I think you might notice Chloe's a little ditzy in the best way possible. I love that clumsiness about her, and she's just very honest and earnest. I don't think Chloe could ever lie to anyone. And so Yui, that's why you're Yui. So, it's been a pleasure to speak about such an old anime. Anyway. Yeah, it's been such an honor to speak about an old anime that a friend and I have been so passionate about in the past, and I hope all of you feel the same way.
So with that, Indulging in anime like KyoAni and thinking to myself what a life like that could be if I properly fit in with them felt more and more like a comfort to me. That even if I couldn't fully fit with them in real life, being able to wonder what a life like that could be like was something that kept me coming back to this and other series like it. But it was in that feeling of the show itself that I actually began to feel comfortable with the idea of more of being a girl. But not being able to fully word anything like that because I was in a Christian school and the environment was not healthy and I was still very much living with conservative parents who I feared would berate me into letting go of the idea. But shows like KyoAni allowed me to keep that feeling alive even in private, to the point where, while I watch them now with a similar bittersweetness that I had when I was younger and wishing I could have had a high school experience where I could have been a girl and fit in with the other girls around me proper, it took me a little bit to realize that, in a way, I kind of already did. I just didn't know it at the time. So, KyoAni now has become one of my favorite shows to go back to post-transition and look upon fondly now, because it was thanks to this dumb, cutesy moeblob bullshit that I was able to feel, enjoy, and love so much about it, myself, and those around me. To the point that I feel utter joy getting to share it with others around me. And if that isn't the most joyous thing about a show about cute girls doing cute things, then I don't know what is. I love light music. I love KyoAni. Thank you for watching this episode of In Transition on KyoAni. There we go. So, yeah, we got a little bit darker this time around. Sorry, not sorry for that fact, but, we kinda had to talk about some more darker stuff about my, high school experience, and, yeah, I'm not sorry for talking about it, but KyoAni is very much one of those shows that really does need to be talked about, but I couldn't really adequately talk about it without talking about that period of time in my life. So, apologies for anybody I made uncomfortable in this video, but, there's a reason for that. But I am very glad I got to talk about KyoAni because, like I've said 1,000 times in this video so far, I fucking love KyoAni. And I feel like it's hard for me to really put it into words, especially in a matter like this, about why I love KyoAni so much. And no. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right at all. I mean, I know I went into reasons why I love this series so much, but I feel I really haven't talked about why this series means so much to me. Talking about my trans journey with it, yeah, it's one thing and everything like that, but I don't know. I feel like I just only scratched the surface of this, you know? God, I feel like the only thing I can do now is just talk about it more comprehensively. Hold on for 1 second. Well, everyone, I think we're gonna be sticking around just a little bit longer, because I don't think I've really adequately explained why I fucking love KyoAni. This video was made possible through supporter patrons like the ones you're seeing on screen right now. If you like videos like this one and others on this channel, please consider supporting them via the Patreon link and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for the time, and catch you later.